Kevin Creamer, and welcome to another episode of Information Services Projects. Today we're going to talk with Julia Kelly, an accessibility specialist in disability services here on campus, about a project she worked on called ClockWork. We're also going to talk with two people from Information Services to see how their contributions made the project a success. But first, here's Julia.
So ClockWork is the leading provider of software solutions that are specially designed to meet the custom needs of departments such as disability services. And they are utilized by universities and colleges across all of North America. They're actually based in Canada. I did some searching and kind of calling around of different schools, and I just kept hearing about ClockWork for the testing center, for running it with software. And so we did implement ClockWork. It's been absolutely amazing. Prior to using ClockWork for our testing center, we were using Box, Banner Web, Excel, Outlook, of course, email, Outlook for email and for scheduling. We use youcanbook.me, as well as a lot of other manual processes. And, when we put manual processes into place with humans that have to do those processes, of course, there's going to be errors and inconsistencies. So now all of those different software solutions that I mentioned that we were previously using, we are not using any of them anymore. All of our emailing, scheduling, test booking, it's all done through ClockWork. And so much of it is automated. Our students are finding it very accessible, and they often remark how our booking process has improved, because for them, that's the big change that they saw. They used to have to manually type in what class it is. Now they select it from a drop down because ClockWork feeds in from Banner. And so it's a faster process for them. And so we're really excited about that. Of our entire student population is registered with our office. Data nationwide shows that it will likely eventually be more around 12. We're still doing a lot of work to promote disability awareness, and we have senior students who come to us sometimes and say, well, I didn't realize I qualified for accommodations because I had depression, or things like that. So eventually we probably will be more up to about 12%. But we have about 400 students who are registered with our office with at least one test taking accommodation. And so that makes them eligible to use our testing center. Right now, our resources and this amazing software and the amount of space that we have, that pretty much caps us. So, but it works out really well. Our students love the testing center, and they've definitely felt a difference on their side with not just the improved new physical space that we have, but also it just feels smoother on their end with our new software being implemented.
That's really great.
Thank
you very much for
no problem.
Everything here. I really appreciate you sharing with us this innovation in your work.
Well, I really appreciate your time and interest in ClockWork. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. To set up an application on campus, it takes several people from Information Services. Today we're going to speak with David Barth, a database administrator, and Greg Miller, the Director of Enterprise Identity and Access. We're talking about the ClockWork implementation. David, what's involved in standing up a database for an application like ClockWork? And was there anything special about this particular application setup?
Yeah, there's a lot of steps involved with back and forth on specifics and requirements for the application. Typically, we have to have several meetings discussing what are the specific needs of the database with the vendor so that we implement settings correctly. With each application that university brings in, there's always different nuances, and we just have to make sure that we get those identified first of all, because it's easy to have a discussion about things, and a lot of times folks kind of think that folks are always on the same page, and it's a matter of identifying what are those specific requirements that are a little bit different than standard, and then try to keep ourselves close to standard, because we do have standards with all our IT computing, and we want to keep things more easy to maintain by keeping things closer to standard. And it makes things not just easier to maintain, but maybe better maintained as far as security and other aspects.
I see. So when it comes to databases, you have a certain way that you want the database to get set up, and you'll make exceptions for that based on what the application needs. But the goal is to stay as close to our standard as possible because we're confident that that's the best to maintain things going forward.
Right. So we have regular processes such as daily backups. So we have backup scripts that expect things a certain way, and everything falls into that standard. Everything's great, and we don't have to invent a new wheel for the next vendor, sort of thing.
Greg, you worked on integrations between ClockWork, the new app, and existing apps on campus. Can you talk a little bit about the integrations?
Sure. As with a lot of other applications that the university uses, my first task was really to look at SSO at single sign-on, and that's very common, actually. The majority of single sign-on integrations that we do are actually for software as a service applications, so applications that are hosted off campus in the cloud, like Box or Google or Office 365. But there are a handful of applications that use single sign-on that are actually hosted on premise in an on-campus data center. One of them is ClockWork. The big one is Banner Forms and Banner Web. Of course, in order to get single sign-on to work, one of the key components to get right is some sort of data feed between, in most cases, Banner and the application, so that the application can identify the folks that are attempting to log in. So in this case, it was faculty and students. So the enterprise application team built an integration that would send faculty and student data, just a minimal set, to the application in order to facilitate the logon process. Once that was in place, I was able to set up the SSO, and away we went. There was one other integration piece having to do with calendaring, and this was a feature in the ClockWork software that would allow appointments that were made in ClockWork to then be displayed in the Outlook calendars of the folks in disability services.
Okay.
And this turned out to be actually very simple. And so what we did is we basically just created we call it a service mailbox, but it's basically a mailbox that doesn't belong to an individual person. It's functioning to perform a service. So in this case, a service mailbox called ClockWork that would have the ability to add invites to the calendars of the staff at disability services so that they could be made aware of the appointments in real time as they were scheduled. And like I said, that was rather straightforward. So that was great.
That's great. I know also Julia, when I spoke with her, showed me actually an integration with Banner, I guess, where they were actually showing the courses that the student was in, so that it essentially connected the student through the course to the specific instructor for the accommodation that was being requested.
Yeah, I think what you were seeing there was the course data. There was actually two data feeds. There was a person or a people data feed, as we usually call it, to get the faculty and student information over, usually just their name and some tidbits of information. And then, of course, there was a course feed that did exactly what you said, that would associate courses with faculty members and then, of course, with the students that were registered in those courses. So those were two separate data feeds that Andrea Zinski in Enterprise Applications worked on. And of course, the application wasn't ready to go until those data feeds were ready to go. So that was a really important piece.
Right. From a complexity standpoint, setting up ClockWork was not particularly difficult. Still, when you put together all the hours that are spent in meetings trying to figure out how the application needs to be supported, and then add on the technical work, Information Services spent a total of 420 hours putting this application together. David spent 45 hours doing the database work, which included some integration consultation, and Greg spent about 20 hours doing his integration work. Greg mentioned that the enterprise applications team spent the most amount of time on the project of all parts of information services, with nearly 100 hours working on the integration between Banner and ClockWork. I'd like to thank Julia, David, and Greg for their time and comments on this project. We'll be back in a few weeks with another information services project at the University of Richmond. I'm Kevin Quinn.